I'm so glad everyone made it today. It's a beautiful rainy morning, and in tradition, I had way too much coffee for a beautiful rainy fall morning. So I thought it might be fitting to begin with a little meditation. We can begin to kind of notice our breath and settle in. Just be aware of where we are. Taking this moment to be aware of every moment that passes through us. I've been thinking about this yoga practice and like what is this practice that we do when we come here to fill these forms and to fit these poses? And it's I heard that yoga is to practice a state of becoming. I think that's kind of a beautiful way to phrase the practice, is to become a pose, to become the breath. The more you practice, the more you can see the connection between what you do with the body and how the mind begins to settle down. It's a really cool thing to observe when we can be mindful through our practice, to be aware of that. It becomes kind of a skill. And the more that we practice that skill, the more aware that we become of the body and the mind right here and right now. It gives us sort of a way to tap into this. There's some kind of a stillness or a comfort or a beingness, an awareness that's always here within us, that's maybe a little bit more subtle than what we're always aware of. You know, the TV's on and we got our phones on. We're always getting bombarded by all this stimulus. But when we settle down and we breathe and we notice the body, we begin to train the mind. We start to realize that there is this sense of fulfillment that's always somewhere deep within us, that just comes from being aware of the body as we sit in this form, as we fill every form that we're going to practice today and every day. And to develop this practice of becoming, it helps to begin where we are, to begin with just being. So let's just be here for a moment. You can begin to notice the body in kind of the mental image that you might have of the body. What do you think your body looks like in this form? What does it feel like to feel, to be aware of every inch of the body, from the surface of the skin all the way down into the depth of our core. And throughout this practice, we're going to see if we can bring that mental image of the body bring it into tune with this physical form, this physical pose that we're in here and now. We're really trying to bring that mind-body connection to grow, to become one. And that is sort of the intention of this moving meditation of yoga. And let's keep that intention in our minds and in our bodies throughout this practice. Being aware of it in each and every breath. Being aware of every cell in the body, from the top of the head all the way down through the spine, into the tips of the fingers and the toes. And bringing that mindfulness with us as we slowly and consciously open our eyes. And take a particularly gratifying breath of air. And just notice how good it feels to breathe, to be grateful for this particular breath. And then we're going to begin in our child's pose, so we can unwind and find our heel a little more than hip distance apart, letting our hips sink between the legs, lengthening the spine as we wiggle the fingers forwards, breathing into the lower back and the side body. Being totally aware of how it might feel different to breathe in this pose versus the last and versus the next. Just being that observer. We can walk our fingers over to the left, and a little crescent here, and breathe into the right kidney. Feel that right shoulder and side body, and a little bit of that hip start to open up. Breathing in a way that gives this part of the body exactly what it needs. And we'll walk our hands back to center and over to the other side. Just being aware of the natural breath and the textures, the sensations of, is this breathing heavy or light, or thick or thin? What qualities am I perceiving? What perceptions am I painting onto the breath as I breathe? Let's bring our hands back to center and open up into a tabletop position. I'm going to start with a few cat-cows. Begin to move the spine. Inhaling to look up in the cow. So bring the shoulders towards the hips. And the belly sinks. And exhaling into our cat. Lengthening the back of the spine. Continuing with a few at your own pace. Finding what feels right. Finding a sense of trust that you know that you can give yourself exactly what you need in this breath of air. And meeting me in neutral. Finding our tabletop. Let's lift the right arm and give ourselves a little shoulder roll, letting the wrist open up. And the arm swing and awaken. Setting that hand down. We'll try the left hand. Noticing every muscle in the arm as it moves. Bring our hands back to center. Tucking our toes behind us. And lifting up into our first downward facing dog. Ardha Mukha Shavasana. Lifting the tailbone up behind us. Shoulder blades borne on the back. Taking a moment to settle in. Maybe pedaling the feet. Opening the heart towards your heels. Maybe looking up at the belly button if that helps to open the shoulders. And looking back forwards at our hands. No, step our feet inch by inch, little baby steps, walking forward, coming up to the fingertips, finding our forward fold, releasing the neck, releasing the jaw. I'm going to grab our elbows and let our upper body swing to the right and to the left. A little bit of a rag doll. Releasing any tension in the body. Preparing ourselves for our practice. Let's release the arms and lift ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae. And the spine come into alignment. Finding our hands at our heart. Finding a steady mountain pose. Pulling those shoulders down towards the hips. Feeling our legs engage. Try to have the insides of the feet about parallel together. Scanning the body from head to toe, toe to head. I breathe in, I am a mountain. I breathe out, I feel steady. Bringing that steadiness with us. We're going to do a sun salutation A. Inhaling to reach up, growing tall, lifting through both side bodies. And exhaling as we bow. Lifting the tailbone up behind us. Our hands come down to the mat. Our hands can come to shins. Our Ardha half monkey pose. And hands come down to the mat. Finding our high plank. Slowly, intentionally lowering down. Finding a low cobra, keeping it low, lifting with the core, the upper core, and the shoulder blades pulling towards the back. And then tucking our toes behind us and pushing up into our down dog. Taking 5, very aware of each breath, 5 breaths. Finding this form and filling this form with the mental image of the body. And then walking our feet forwards into the forward fold. Inhaling, hands to shins, looking up. And exhaling to bow. Releasing the neck, releasing the jaw. Hinging from the hips as we rise up. Growing tall. And bringing our hands to our heart. Shoulder blades pulling towards those hips. Strong in the core, pulling the ribs into the core. Finding our engaged mountain pose. Feeling very steady and strong. Finding a lot of strength in this mountain pose because we're going to bring that strength with us for a sun salutation B. Inhaling to grow. And bow. Inhaling to look up. And finding our chair pose. Bowing and stepping or floating back into our high plank. Exhaling to lower down. Following through at your own pace. Finding what works with your breath. Inhale. Finding maybe a little more of a high cobra here. Lifting that heart. Opening the heart, keeping those shoulders pulled onto the back. Tucking our toes behind us. Pushing back into our downward facing dog. Pedaling out those feet. Lifting the tailbone behind us. We're going to walk the feet forward just until the left heel graces the mat. And then lift the right foot up off the mat. Find a 3-legged dog. Bringing that right knee to the right elbow. Keeping as much height as you can on the tailbone. And pushing that foot back out behind us. And the right knee comes into the left elbow. Feeling the core and the obliques engage. Exhaling that foot back out behind us. Lifting it as high as it will go. Stepping the right foot forwards between the hands. Rising up into our warrior one pose. Keeping that back heel down on the mat. Keeping the outside of the back foot pulling in and forwards. The knee just above the heel. Squaring those hips. Shoulders in alignment. And growing tall. Noticing how the breath feels different here. We're going to hold this posture for a few more breaths. To notice, maybe to scan the body from head to toe. See if there's anything in the mental image of this pose that's any different from the physical form that you're holding. Be aware of that. And we're going to bring our arms down to frame the foot. Stepping that right foot back, finding our high plank, and lowering down very mindfully, very slowly. Finding our cobra, maybe a low cobra, and then a high cobra. And tucking the toes behind us as we push back into our downward facing dog. Lifting our left foot up behind us. And bringing that left knee into the left elbow. Three-legged plank. Keeping as much height on the tailbone and the chest as we can. Left knee to the left elbow. And exhaling it back out behind us. And then the left knee comes to the right elbow. Feeling the core fire up here. And finding our stability and our balance, keeping the center of gravity just the same as a chaturanga. Using the core to pull it into place. And then bringing that left foot back out behind us, lifting it as high as it will go. Stepping the left foot forwards between the hands. And rising up for our warrior one. Finding the hips and shoulders in alignment and square. Keeping that outside of that back foot, pulling in and forwards. And again, we'll scan the body all the way up from our foundation through every muscle. We are firing up in our warrior one. Noticing how satisfying it is to feed those muscles with every breath of air. And bringing our arms down, frame that foot. Stepping back into our high plank. One more bonus chaturanga. You could also just meet me in down dog. Lifting the tailbone behind us, lengthening the spine, keeping the shoulder blades behind the ears. Breathing all the way down to the lower back. And then walking forwards into our forward fold. You can inhale, hands to shins, look up, curve the back. And exhale to bow. Finding our steady foundation, all four corners of the feet. Bending the knees, finding our chair pose. Squatting those hips, looking up, keeping those ribs knitted into the core, lengthening the side body, and rise up tall with our hands to our heart. The more we practice, the better it feels just to breathe. Let's let our hands dangle. Maybe try a little windmill as you rotate the shoulders. Let the weight of the hands carry themselves. Let the spine loosen itself. And then let the arms come to a pause, dangling at their own pace, finding a moment of stillness. Noticing how good it feels just to be still in our mountain pose. Taking a moment to adjust our form, keeping those insides of the feet parallel to one another, keeping the shoulders just above the heels. Finding our weight beneath us and our steadiness within us. Push the weight over to the left foot. Lift the right knee into the chest and find our standing balance. Pushing the hands out as we kick the foot out. Beginning our classical sun salutation as we very slowly step back into a low lunge, moving as slowly as possible. Those toes come down to the mat, that back knee comes down. Pulling those hips. The left hip comes forward and down a little bit. The right hip comes up to meet it. Pulling those shoulder blades down and behind the earlobes onto the back. Reaching for the mat beneath us as you open the heart and look up. Feeling the feet isometrically pulling towards one another. And then we'll bring our hands down to frame that left foot, lifting the right knee off the mat, and the left foot steps back, finding our high plank. And here we're going to bring knees, chest, and chin to the mat, lifting the tailbone behind us, 8-pointed pose, wagging the tail, feeling the lower back release. And then keeping that back bend as we pull the heart through into our low cobra. Tucking the toes behind us and pushing back to our downward facing dog. Lifting that right foot up behind us. Stepping it forwards between the hands. Finding our low lunge on this side. It should be the opposite side of the last time. Pulling those hips and shoulders down to the mat, and then reaching the middle fingers for the mat beneath us as we open the heart and look up. Anjaneyasana breath. Keeping the ribs strong. Bringing our hands forwards to frame that front foot. Lifting the back knee off of the mat and lifting that back heel up into a standing split. Testing our balance and very slowly bringing it forwards into a standing balance. You can exhale, pushing that foot out. And inhale, our feet back together, standing steady in our mountain pose. Taking a moment to appreciate the stability of everyday life, everyday standing, of the simple poses. We're going to follow through, finding weight on the right foot, going back the other ways around. Bring the left knee up into the chest, finding our stability wherever that might be. Exhaling, the hands push out, the foot kicks out. And very slowly bringing the foot back. Maybe taking a warrior 3 along the way, just finding that pose before we bring that foot back down. Bring that knee down into our low lunge, squaring the hips and the shoulders. This time, reaching up, growing long through the side body, and reaching for the wall behind us as we add the back bend. Inhaling, grow tall, bringing our hands to our heart, and down to frame the foot. Tucking the left toes behind us, stepping that right foot back, finding our high plank. We're going to pause in high plank for a moment and just notice the mountain pose in our plank pose, how the core and ribs engage. We're pulling our hands towards our feet. See if you can be aware of how this feels to hold a plank pose and bring this much strength and steadiness into our mountain pose the next time we get there. We'll bring our knees, chest and chin down to the mat. 8-pointed pose. Wagging the tail, feeling the back bend, and pulling our heart through into a low cobra, and then a high cobra, and maybe an upward facing dog if that's part of your practice. And pushing back into our down dog, pulling up the feet, bringing the heart to the heels. Lifting the tailbone, lengthening the spine, pushing out through the fingertips and the heels. Lifting the left foot up behind us and stepping that foot forwards between the hands. Back knee comes down to the mat. Our low lunge. The left hand pulls the left hip down. The right hand pulls the right hip up, trying to keep them in line. The feet are pulling together The core pulls the ribs in, shoulders pull down towards the hips. Our hands raise up, our heart opens. We exhale and reach for the wall behind us, adding the back bend with a strong core to protect the back. Inhaling back up the center. And exhaling as we bring our hands down to frame the foot. Tucking the toe behind us. Lifting that back foot into a standing split. Testing our balance. Maybe a bonus warrior 3 if you're more of a level 1, 2. And slowly bringing that knee forwards into a standing balance. Testing our balance. Kicking that foot out. Bringing our feet and hands back to center in our mountain pose. Finding steadiness here. Finding our plank pose in the mountain pose. Noticing the heart beating. Noticing how still the mind has become. Noticing every breath of air, how it feeds every cell in the body, completely aware of every motion that we make. We lengthen our spine, lift up from the top of the head, and bow with a flat back. Inhaling to the monkey pose and exhaling to fold. Stepping, hopping, or floating back into our plank pose. And meeting me in downward facing dog. Finding the stability of this pose. Walking our feet forwards until the heels can just barely grace the mat. Lifting the tailbone up behind us and lengthening the spine. Let's find the weight onto the right hand and bring the left hand to reach the back of the right heel, looking underneath the right armpit. Feeling that right side body lengthen. A little bit of a twist on the left shoulder. We'll bring our hands back to center. Paddling the feet. Finding that weight on the left hand. And the right hand reaches behind the left heel. We'll look behind the left armpit. A deep breath here as we lengthen the left side body. Bring our hands back into our down dog. We're going to bend our knees and take a moment in a child's pose, lengthening the spine, Breathing all the way down to the hips. Feeling the shoulders release. Wiggling our fingers, maybe as far forwards as they'll go. Maybe grabbing the heels behind us, or adding a bind. Taking this moment to catch up with that mental image of the body and bring it back into alignment with the pose that we're in. We're gonna tuck our toes behind us and lift up. Finding down dog. Finding that left heel onto the mat. Lifting that right foot up, stepping it forwards between the hands. Windmilling into our warrior two. And taking a moment to be aware of the form. The front heel is intersecting the arch of the back foot, pulling them together isometrically. The knee just above the heel, shoulders onto the back. Opening those arms, opening heart, gazing over the middle finger. Your arms are strong and long. Let's flip the front palm, reach up, and reach for the wall behind us, lengthening the whole side body. Breathing into the right kidney. Lifting ourselves back up into the warrior two. Bending the elbow and finding side angle pose. If you try to make a straight line between the left heel and the left pinky finger. Keeping the shoulders onto the back, trying to keep this in one plane. So you imagine the shoulder and the shoulder blade and the bicep being just behind the earlobe as you look up at the left hand. And then using our core to lift ourselves up into our warrior two. Finding the posture and coming down to frame that foot. Stepping the right foot back to meet the left. And meeting me in downward facing dog. Lifting the left foot up behind us. And stepping it forwards between the hands. Pivoting that back foot perpendicular as we windmill the arms up for our warrior two. Expanding the full wingspan. Feeling strong from our foundation and lifting up through the top of the head. Let's flip the front palm, reach up, and for the wall behind us. Feeling the left kidney and breathing into it, feeling that oxygen flow through the left side body. Lifting ourselves back up into our warrior two, keeping that knee just above the heel. Shoulder blades on the back, bend the elbow, and find the side angle pose. Keeping that shoulder blade behind the ear as you look up, the hand above you. Try to create as long of a line between that back heel and the top hand as you can. So you're really lengthening that side body. And then we'll bring our hands down to frame that front foot. Stepping the left foot back. Finding your downward facing dog. We're going to lift the right foot up behind us. Put the right heel behind the left wrist, find a pigeon pose. So we can really open that hip up. Take a moment to give the legs a little bit of a rest. Breathe all the way down into the hips and release any tension in the lower back. Finding just enough stretch that feels right for you. Taking a moment to breathe, to really be aware of exactly what this breath of air is doing within the body and within the mind. Let's come back up onto our hands. Tuck the left toes under, step that right foot back. Finding our down dog. Pedaling out the feet. Lifting the left foot. And putting that left heel behind the right wrist. Finding a pigeon pose on this side. Noticing if this feels any different from the other side. Just being aware of that mental image of the body in this form. You may have imagined yourself perfectly symmetric. You may be finding that's not always the case. Just observing what really is without judgment. Just being here within the body, every breath, every moment, fully aware of what's going on. And we can come back up onto our hands, tucking the right toes behind us, stepping back, finding our down dog. Lifting that right foot up behind us and stepping it forward between the hands, finding the warrior two once again. Keeping those heels pulling inwards and together. Flipping the front palm. Gonna reverse the warrior. And then we're gonna square the shoulders forwards and bring the right hand behind our back to the left hip for the exalted warrior. If it helps your balance to stagger the feet a little more like warrior one, you can do that as well. Either way is good. But here we're feeling that right shoulder really open up behind the back. Bring both of our hands up and to our heart. Straightening the front knee. This time bringing that back foot a little forwards and about hip distance apart. We can bring our hands either to grab the elbows or reverse namaste. We're going to find a pyramid pose, Parsvottanasana. Keeping the back flat as we bow, trying to keep the heart and the back parallel to the mat. Finding the right distance of the feet to do that. And bringing our hands down to frame the front foot, stepping that foot back, finding our downward facing dog. Finding our right heel onto the mat, lifting the left foot up as high behind us as we can, and stepping that foot forwards. Finding the warrior two. Finding our posture strong from the foundation. The ribs pulled into the core. Flipping the front palm and reaching for the wall behind us. The peaceful warrior. Hands come to our shoulders. We can square them to the front. Then the left hand grabs the right hip, finding that shoulder behind the back. Feeling the shoulder open up and breathing into that shoulder as we add the back bend. You don't have to back bend. You can reach straight up too. That's more of your practice. Finding where the pose feels right for you. And coming forwards, bringing that back foot about hip distance apart, straightening the front leg, lengthening the spine, either grabbing the elbows or the reverse namaste as we find Parsvottanasana, the pyramid. Keeping the back flat as we bow into that left hamstring and that left hip. Bringing our hands down to frame that foot. Stepping the left foot back and the right. We're going to find a tabletop position. Taking a moment for a few cat-cows. Just to release anything in the lower shoulders or the upper back. Finding our stability in the tabletop. Lifting the right hand out in front of us. Maybe the left foot out behind us. Bringing the right hand out to the right airplane arm, shoulder blade on the back. And then trying to bring that left foot parallel to the arm. Lifting it as high as we can. Feeling the core engage. The left hand pulls towards that right foot. And we're going to thread the needle. That right shoulder comes underneath the left wrist. I should say the bicep underneath the left wrist. You got to bring your foot back down for balance if that's better. Or leave it lifted if you like the challenge. Maybe staying here, maybe here. Maybe lifting that left hand. One of my favorites is grabbing the toe. Feeling that shoulder open up and breathing into that shoulder. Unwinding, finding your way back to our tabletop. Maybe taking a counter stretch as you reach that right arm up. Hands come back down. Finding our tabletop. Taking another cat-cow just to clear it out. Moving the spine vertebrae by vertebrae. Being very aware of every motion of the body. And meeting me in a neutral tabletop. The flat back. Lifting the left hand up and forwards. Lengthening that arm as far as it will go. And that right foot comes back out behind us. Feeling the right hand pull towards the left knee, as the left hand and the right foot expand. The left arm comes out to the left, and the right foot tries to kick out parallel, keeping it as high off of the ground as we can. And taking whichever variation of thread the needle works for your practice. Maybe the simple pose, maybe with the leg out, maybe with the leg and the shoulder lifted. Feeling that breath come into that left side body and the shoulder. Unwinding back to our tabletop. Lifting the left arm and the left shoulder up. Finding that counter stretch. Finding our tabletop. We're going to bring ourselves into a seated position. However you need to get there. Beginning with the butterfly, we can bring our heels and the knife edge of the feet together. Open the feet like a book. Trying to get all 10 toenails down to the mat. So maybe the elbows push the hips closer to the ground. Finding yourself stable, lengthening the spine, growing as tall as you can grow here, lifting up through the top of the head on the inhale. And exhaling to bow with a flat back. As much as you can bow, keeping that back flat, keeping the shoulder blades onto the back behind the earlobes. And inhaling back up to center. This time we're going to exhale and bow. You can curve the back and try to smell your feet. See if you can get your nose all the way down to the mat. Feeling those hips open and release. Coming back up to center. We're going to reach the right foot out long, keeping the left heel into the right leg. Janu Sarasana. You can try to grab that right toe. Bring the left shoulder and the left hand out behind us. And then above us, keeping the shoulder behind the ear and looking underneath the armpit, feeling that side body really lengthen. Releasing that lower left back. A gentle smile on the face. As we exhale and release. Bringing our shoulders centered. And this time bowing to grab the foot or the ankle, wherever you are, with both hands, with the shoulders square, bowing forwards right into that hamstring. And inhaling back up to center. Whichever variation works for you. We're going to bring the left leg out long and the right heel into the leg. The left hand can grab the ankle, the toe, the side of the foot. The right hand reaches out behind us. Find the full wingspan, lifting up through the top of the head. Reaching that right hand above us. And then for the foot, looking underneath that armpit, trying to keep that left shoulder behind the earlobe and the right shoulder also behind the earlobe so that your shoulders are perpendicular to the ground. And lifting ourselves up with our core, finding our shoulders square, lengthening the spine on the inhale, and reaching for the foot on the exhale. Working right in the hamstring, keeping those shoulders just over the heel or centered with it. Breathing all the way into that leg. And coming back up to center. We're going to come onto our backs, hugging our knees, giving ourselves a little hug, and then grabbing the outsides of the feet for a happy baby pose. Bringing the knees underneath the armpits, keeping that tailbone rooted as much as you can. Rocking side to side to give the back a little massage. And then bringing the knees together, the hands beneath us. Find the plow pose. Forward fold so that we release the upper back and the lower neck. Just trying to bring those toes to the ground above our heads. And then vertebrae by vertebrae, releasing ourselves long, finding our Shavasana. Taking any last poses that you may need as we begin to settle in. Taking this moment to celebrate this work that we've done together to bring our body and our mind into alignment. Noticing the stillness and the subtle sense of fulfillment that we have from the stability of this pose. Recognizing that this calmness, this peace, and the centered awareness that we have developed in this practice, this sense of peace is yours. It comes from within. And only you can create that fulfillment for yourself. And you can take it with you throughout your day, throughout your week. It is always there for you. And all you need to do is to breathe, be aware, and feel exactly what the breathing does. With gratitude for each and every breath of air that we are gifted in this life. You can begin to wiggle your fingers and your toes. Be aware of the body. Bending the knees into your chest. And rocking from side to side. Giving yourself a little hug as you roll over onto the right side body in a fetal position, using your arm as a pillow. And sitting up into a seated position with your hands at your heart, your eyes closed. I am so grateful to each of you for joining me in this practice today. The Love Enlighten Me honors the love and light in each of you. Namaste.